In the dense woods just outside Portland, Oregon, a young woman vanished just days before Christmas. Now, she was with her boyfriend, but he came back alone. This is the deeply tragic and still unsolved story of Allyson Watterson.
So let's set the scene. It's just before Christmas in 2019. On December 22nd, a 20-year-old named Allyson Watterson disappears in this rural, heavily wooded area near Portland. And that disappearance would kick off a frantic search and a mystery that honestly still haunts the area to this day.
And the heart of this mystery is so simple, but it's also incredibly chilling. Allyson was last seen with her boyfriend. The next day, he was found, but she wasn't. So we're going to walk through the absolute chaos of that weekend to try and piece together what could have possibly happened here.
To really get what happened out there in those woods, you first have to understand the two people at the absolute center of this story.
So first, who was Allyson Watterson? Well, by all accounts, she was just this vibrant, super caring person who was incredibly close with her family. Now, she did face some pretty significant health challenges: Tourette's, ADHD, and scoliosis. But she was known for having this incredibly positive outlook. She was just one of those people who was always trying to help others.
One of her close friends, Raven, put it just perfectly. She said Allyson talked about nothing but love and light. And that's just such a heartbreaking way to remember a young woman who, despite her own struggles, really tried to see the good in everyone.
And then there's the other key figure, her boyfriend, Benjamin Garland. Their relationship was really new and pretty tumultuous, only about 3 months. Ben had a troubled history, both with substance abuse and with the law. He even had an active warrant out for his arrest, and that's going to become really critical in a minute. And it seems like this relationship was having a really negative effect on Allyson.
Okay, so this troubled relationship is the backdrop for Allyson's last known weekend. And I have to tell you, the timeline is confusing, it's chaotic, and it is filled with really, really strange events. Let's try and break it down. So, this timeline is absolutely critical. It all starts on Friday, December 20th. Allyson leaves home with Ben. Things escalate fast. By early Sunday morning, they show up at a fire station saying they'd been robbed. But, and this is a huge but, they refuse to get the police involved. Ben's mom picks them up, but the chaos doesn't stop. Ben then steals a truck and drives with Allyson back to North Plains. And it's only after they ditch that stolen truck that we get the last confirmed sighting of Allyson Watterson.
And that final sighting? It comes from a resident named Sally, who found them right on her doorstep. She said they looked a mess. Allyson was thirsty and weirdly was wearing Ben's shoes. They asked to use her phone to call for a ride. But here's the key part. When Sally offered to call the police for help, Ben was adamant. No cops.
Okay, so what happened after Allyson was last seen is where this whole story just completely unravels. Ben's conflicting stories and his family's really strange actions, well, they didn't just delay the search, they also cast this dark cloud of suspicion right over them. This number is just staggering. 30. That's how many hours passed between Allyson's last sighting on Sunday morning and her family finally being told she was missing on Monday evening. In any missing person case, that is a massive, and I mean potentially devastating, loss of time. And right here, this is the central problem for investigators. Ben's story just kept changing, depending on who he was talking to. To the police, he said, "Oh, we just got separated in the woods." But to other people, he said Allyson was too tired to walk, so he just left her. He even told his own mother that Allyson had been arrested. We've got 4 different stories, all from the same person. The accounts just don't add up at all. And Ben's family's actions on that Monday are just as puzzling. So Ben shows up at home alone. He's described as filthy, bloody, and all torn up. And what's the very first thing his mother does? She washes his clothes. It's only hours later that the family decides to start their own private search. And it's not until 5:30 in the evening that they finally call Allyson's mom to tell her that her daughter is gone.
So because of that huge delay, the official search began at a serious disadvantage. Months would go by before there was any kind of resolution, and even then, the discovery would only lead to more questions.
6 long months later, on June 20th, 2020, a property owner who was just out clearing some brush found human remains. They were discovered near where Allyson was last seen. And soon after, they were positively identified. It was Allyson Watterson. The search was finally over, but the investigation was not. So what happened to Ben Garland? Well, despite all the suspicion, he was never formally named a suspect in Allyson's death.
He was arrested on his other warrants and for that truck theft, and he got a 3-year sentence. But then, in 2023, he died of a drug overdose, taking any chance of getting the full story right along with him. The only person who knew what really happened in those final hours was gone forever.
And that leaves us with this series of just troubling, unanswered questions. I mean, first and foremost, why the 30-hour delay? Why would anyone wait that long to report someone missing? It just doesn't make sense.
And this might be the most baffling question of them all. Why did Ben's mother immediately wash his bloody and dirty clothes? Her son comes home alone, he's in a terrible state, and her first instinct is to destroy potential evidence. It's an action that has fueled so much speculation ever since.
And think about this. The initial search was huge. They covered that area for 5 straight days. So how were her remains missed? Was it just a simple, tragic oversight because the terrain was so dense? Or does it point to the much more sinister possibility that her body was put there later?
And this is the heartbreaking reality of this case. Because of the condition her remains were in, a cause of death couldn't even be determined. With Ben Garland gone, the full story of what happened to Allyson Watterson may never, ever be known, leaving her family with a lifetime of painful uncertainty. But this case is still open. Investigators believe someone out there might still have some small piece of information that could finally bring some clarity. So if you know anything at all, please contact the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Allyson's family deserves answers.